Yeah, seriously. You're like becoming more of a Viking or something.
I'm working on it. I mean,
I think you're really working on it.
I got to do something. I didn't intend the whole Viking thing, but I'm taking it. You know, I really am. I'm gonna go with it. Yeah, I'm gonna just say, you know, I mean, there are worse things to look like. I think, as long as I'm not one of those like potbelly Vikings, you know, as long as I can, you know,
yeah.
And you know, I am a pacifist. I don't ever want to fight anybody. But I think a good idea is to look like you could win the fight, and then nobody wants to fight you.
Right. And unless where we left off last time, you're a pacifist unless you're hurting yourself. Let's put context, an alternate version. In a different universe, Simon hates himself, so he wants to hurt himself. Yes.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you would too, honestly. Honestly, you would. Let's just get real. I've written 3 episodes for the Everything I Hate About Me podcast. I'm just writing a bunch, and then I'll, because it's all gonna be the podcast I decided is going to be the opposite of what you do. Whereas you're interested in other people. This episode I was writing just last night. I have maybe like 3 or 4 reminders throughout the episode to anyone who's listening that this podcast is not about you, it's about me.
Yeah.
So don't, you know, you know, I will say something like I'm trying to relate to, you know, to somebody who might be listening, and I'll say, but just to remind you, this is about me. This is all about me. I think I need to raise this microphone.
Like, just so you know, don't get it twisted.
Yeah, this is
for all mankind.
Exactly. This is not to benefit anyone else. Okay, this is my time. I think I specifically say, if you want to talk about you, make your own podcast.
Oh man, do your own thing. Stop trying to be like interested in what the welfare of other people. How dare you? How dare you?
Do you hear the ceiling fan through my mic? Is it okay?
No, I don't hear.
I was making sure, because I like air.
But you know, I'm playing Simon Phoenix today.
That's right. That's right. You're.
I'm Wesley Snipes' alter ego and Demolition Man.
I just want you to call me Teddy Bear.
Yeah.
From now on.
Okay.
Because that's my favorite line that he does in the movie when he unlocks the restraints by using the password.
Yeah.
Teddy Bear. Teddy Bear.
And Taco Bell's become a weird place in the future. Like, oh, that's what everybody loves.
So a couple of weeks ago, I watched the movie Demolition Man with my kids. And when they say they're going to go to Taco Bell and they act like it's a big thing, my kids are like, did they just say Taco Bell?
Yeah.
They had the same confusion that Sylvester Stallone's character had in the film. You know, they were just like, wait, did they just say Taco Bell?
Yeah. Yeah. So, it's fine dining in the future.
That's right. That's right. And I several times in that movie, I just had to tell my kids, just wait for it. Just wait for it. You know, there's a lot of great payoff in that film, in that movie. So we're talking about Demolition Man, and here's my first question to you about this movie. So I decided to go and see what different kind of like critics might be saying about Demolition Man. And so I went on YouTube and I found some videos of people who are kind of dissecting the movie from the perspective of the last few years.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of people who are on the side of this movie being prophetic, being ahead of its time, being way more intelligent than people want to give it, than people initially thought it was, and things like that. So what's your view on that? Demolition Man, is it ahead of its time? Is it way more intelligent and smart than anybody wanted to admit for a Sylvester Stallone vehicle?
On some level, yes. On some level, yes. I think on the aspect of like societal change.
Yeah.
Like that, the kind of the division of people, the people who are living underground versus the people who are living in kind of the society has changed so much, no cursing, and all this stuff. But then there's this other side where the people are eating rats and stuff, and they're living underground. And it's this kind of division of society, which on some level feels very prophetic. I'm not sure they knew what was happening with that.
It is. I mean, that part is a little bit interesting. I thought it was, what I felt like, and I was watching some of these critics, is that they were kind of missing the point that in Demolition Man, things are happening from the top down.
Yeah.
And it's not media controlled. It's this one guy.
Yeah.
And it becomes this dystopian, utopian society because of the ideas and philosophies of one individual. And that's just not what we have today. And I felt like a lot of these critical reviews were missing the mark on that point, is that a lot of what we have is media controlled from the bottom up. So you have a really loud voice, but they're not the government. They're not, it's some kind of movement, a grassroots movement. And that is affecting, political correctness and things like that. We definitely don't have many leaders other than a person like an AOC, who frankly doesn't have a lot of national sway. You know what I mean?
Sure.
I mean, there's a small contingent of far less people who really, give a lot of importance to AOC's voice. And I actually really love her, but I'm saying that she doesn't sway me on topics. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no,
so
that makes sense.
So, and I feel free to disagree with somebody and that's the great thing about our society. We feel free to disagree with everybody, even if we love them and adore them. We don't have to like everything that they say and that they might stand for and things like that. So anyway, so I thought it really missed the mark, or these critical reviews who were talking about it being prophetic and stuff like that really missed the mark, where it's like, it's not the government that's telling us how to behave. It's Twitter.
Right. Yeah.
Oh
yeah, no, it's true. Yeah. It's the people in a weird version of the people. Like, Demolition Man, it's strange because it's like John Spartan comes from this time where it's like massive violence. Yeah. And it looks like hell on earth when he's fighting people. It's just like LA's burning. It's crazy. And then he gets put into this society after being cryogenically freeze, this whole thing where it's like happy, happy, joy, joy. Everybody's like very soft versions of humans. And he just like, it's strange to think of a society like that now. Like, no.
Yeah.
no. Like, this is more the John Spartan society right now.
I feel like, that's what I mean.
That's where he's at now. Like,
Yeah. I mean, we have the January 6th hearings going on right now. I mean, what could be more John Spartan era-esque than something like that, a violent contingent of people trying to overthrow free and fair elections.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. So it's not that our freedom of speech today is being controlled somehow by, the powers that be. We're controlling each other. We're telling each other, we're canceling each other.
Yes.
And so I think that is a huge distinction to make here, is that, I mean, take January 6th just for an example. Yes, there was government conspiracy going on. We're seeing all the evidence of somebody like a figure like a Donald Trump and things like that. And they are swaying the opinions of a lot of people.
Right.
But the information is there now, right? So we know, in like the words of Bill Barr, that it's all bullshit. Everything that Trump has been, touting and his other people have been touting, it's all bullshit. And that's a direct quote.
That is a direct quote. I watched when he said it.
So in that way, we are not following, just like blindly following the philosophies of one person, we're choosing, or I say we, I'm just meaning those who are continuing to choose to believe what they were touting. They're just freely choosing it. Nothing's being hidden. Nothing, it's all there. Whereas in this, future, which do you remember what year it was? It's only like 10 years from now or something like that. It was supposed to be like 2030 or something like that. That's what it feels.
So far out. Yeah.
Yeah. It's great to go back and watch these older sci-fi films where they're thinking about the future. And I mean, even just books like 1984, things like that. And it's like, we're so far removed from that. But at the same time, I mean, there are those who are trying to make those things a reality. There are people in power who are trying to make those things a reality. But thank goodness that there are other people who are, fighting against that and things like that. I did watch this movie and think about, the loss of freedom that they were experiencing, and the idea that you can no longer choose to do anything that's bad for you.
Yeah, you can't just have sex with someone. It's like controlled.
And I feel like we do have a version of that today, but once again, it's us against us, right? It's not the government who's telling us you can't do this, you can't do that because it's bad for you. It's, other people who feel so emboldened on these social media platforms that they, continue to, body shame, personality shame, personal philosophy or political philosophy shame, and things like that. And once in a while, I do agree with the people who are doing the shaming, but for the most part, I feel like, why don't we just share information? Why is sharing information?
Easy, that's too. I always tell people that's just too reasonable, Simon. You're talking about reasonable people. Like who are those people? They're not us, probably.
Too much to ask. Yeah.
I mean, look at us. Do we look reasonable?
Yeah.
Look at you. Look at me. Do we look reasonable?
You think there's an assumption when people post things online that everyone else is an idiot?
Maybe.
You know what I mean? Like whenever, even when I see something that's really positive, people are putting up, really positive things. I feel like it's being posted for the lowest common denominator. Like, I don't want you to really think. So instead of asking you to think about something, I'm going to post something that is so redundant. I don't know. But maybe it sounded cool as a meme or a GIF or whatever. But I have so little patience and tolerance for so much of the stuff that gets posted on social media, not because I don't like the other person or I don't like the basic idea of what they're saying, but I hate the way it's being said.
Yeah. But, also mirrors it too, in the sense that, like, in Demolition Man, they try to put out this society that is so perfect and is so utopia based. And that's kind of how some version of social media is. Let me put out how great life is. Let's put out this facade. But meanwhile, there's a lot of bad stuff happening, but you're only going to see the good stuff. And that's what they do in the movie. You're only going to see a futuristic Taco Bell where it's good. And where society
but it's also peaceful. Bland and tasteless, right? Because they don't use salt. There's no salt.
But then meanwhile, there's this other faction of people. We just don't talk about them. We don't, they're not part of society. Or we're just, it's almost this metaphor for like, we're going to show you the good stuff and we're going to subvert our bad feelings. You don't need to see the bad stuff. Like,
and the good part of society has become so bland and tasteless that a wrap burger tastes amazing. Well, that's the best dang wrap burger I've ever had.
Can't do that anymore. I used to be really good at that, man. It's like
Let me switch something off real quick.
Yeah,
One
no
second.
problem.
Sorry.
It's all good, man. He couldn't take it, man. He couldn't take it.
I think I was hearing the fan. I was like, that's well, you know what? Let me remind everyone, this is about me.
Clearly. It's about Simon's comfort. Okay.
That's like, right. That's right. I don't care about anyone else.
Clearly. Like, but yeah, I feel the parallels with society in that way. Like when we're talking about that with social media, I would be interested in that movie. Like, would social media exist in the Demolition Man in the future? It's too negative in many ways. I don't think it would exist. Yeah. Like,
because social media is a freedom of speech type of thing. And, you know, I felt like that was one of the more interesting things about the last few years is how many people were wanting to abandon social media because lies were being filtered.
Yeah.
And I thought that was really interesting.
That is interesting, right?
You know, and it isn't like Facebook isn't a public forum.
Yeah.
It's a private, you know, website. And so Facebook can do whatever it wants.
True.
And it can filter out whatever it wants, and it can tell whoever it wants to get off their platform, and it can tell you, you know, if it wants to, what to say, what to do. And a lot of people have a big problem with that.
Right.
I don't have a problem with that because my expectations of what Facebook is are so different, I think.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't expect Facebook to allow me to put up Nazi propaganda. You know what I mean? And I'm not saying that's what everybody's doing.
A restaurant to let me come in barefoot either with no shirt off.
Exactly. Like, you know, this is their private business. They can do what they want. And if they don't like what I'm saying, they can cancel me, you know, whatever.
Go to another restaurant. You know? It's like, it's like where they allow that. I don't know.
You know, Facebook for me is a place to just like see what everybody's up to, post some pictures of my kids and what they're doing, you know. It is nice when people can share information and people can find community and things like that.
Too simple, Simon.
Yeah, this is me. Yeah.
They have to make it more complex than that.
But yeah, you know, it's it. But you know, what's interesting about maybe like a Demolition Man type society is that you can lie all you want.
Yeah.
But you get fined for swearing.
Yeah.
And Big Brother's always listening in.
Right.
And so anytime anybody says a swear word, you know, you hear in the background, it's one of the great details of the movie is that you constantly hear it in the background. You know, John Spartan, you have been fined 50 credits for the violation of the, you know, whatever.
Yeah.
And so that's fantastic. But I think, you know, of course, you know, what kind of computer algorithm can tell if you're lying all the time? I don't know, but I mean, they can hear you swearing. So, but that's really, you know, I think what a lot of people mean by freedom of speech, which I think is also interesting. They mean I should have the right to tell lies. Did you hear what I'm saying?
Yes. Yes.
Because I'm choosing to believe something that's not true. And since I choose to believe it, I should be able to propagate that thing no matter what.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And I think that's just a really interesting concept. And I would love to see some futuristic movie deal with that concept, that idea of what happens when you take away people's ability to lie.
Wow, I love that. I actually think that's an amazing movie idea. What would that be like, though? Like,
that would be something so
weird,
foreign to all of us, because even the most honest amongst us is doing what Emily Dickinson says and telling the truth, but telling it slant.
That's exactly right.
Because we're always working from our own personal perspective. So it might not even feel like a lie to us.
Yeah.
But to someone else who might have different information, and might have more correct information, we might be saying something that's completely untrue, but we thought it was we thought it was true.
Yeah.
I think anybody who is a religious person but actually takes the time to learn the history and the background of their own religion finds that. I mean, as Christians, you and I, I just feel like there's a responsibility to know where our beliefs came from.
Of course.
So I do a lot of studying of texts that are written by Jewish scholars, because take the Old Testament, just for example, it's all written in Hebrew. Do I really trust a non-Hebrew person to give me a good interpretation of what that text is saying? Not nearly as much as I trust a Hebrew person or a Jewish person, somebody who understands the language and understands that even if, so take the King James, for example, sometimes it might get kind of a word for word thing, more or less correct, but in doing so loses the intent of what those phrases mean.
Yeah.
So, and then you end up with what's basically a lie.
Right. Right. Yeah.
And it wasn't maybe intended to be a lie.
Right. Correct.
I think there's like an old saying that every translation is a treason.
Yeah.
And it's because you can't do it. And I find that just really fascinating. So I have a couple of really huge volumes of like the Quran and also the Hebrew Bible and things like that, with long, I mean, bigger than the text itself are the explanations for the text. Because the point being, you can't translate these languages into English.
Right.
There's just no possible way. So every translation requires long explanatory things about it. And when we think about like the King James, there were no Jews in Britain.
Right.
They had been expelled. It was illegal to be Jewish.
Right.
So if there even was somebody of Jewish heritage, they had to have been converted to Christianity. So in other words, when we're getting this translation of the Hebrew Bible by the King James scholars, you get no Hebrew interpretation. Right. You only get Anglo-Saxon, Christian interpretation of that text. Yeah. So anyway, it's a unique idea. It's a fun idea to play with, and it's something that to always keep in mind as we're reading, not just a religious text, but if we're reading an article, if we're reading, or if we're listening to our political representatives and things like that, and understand that even if they feel like they're telling us the truth, it's always focused through a very specific lens that is cutting out of the picture so much of the information.
Yeah. That's so much. It made me think of, like you were saying, translation. And I was like, well, what's happening with the translation of kind of an extremist view of religion, kind of your, what people would say, very conservative, far right evangelicalism, which has become almost an extremist. I mean, I'm just going to say like a terrorist organization at this point that does not resemble anything like what you and I are like.
Yeah.
But it's like the squeaky wheel, right? So loud. So
loud.
And canceling expecting almost a lot of reviews of things.
Yeah. And that extremist religiosity wants to turn our nation into a theocracy.
Right. Exactly.
So you get, the latest ruling for the football coach.
Yeah.
That he can pray and everything like that. Mm-hmm. Well, what if he'd been a Muslim?
Right.
Would they have even heard the case?
Oh, no. No.
No.
They would have wiped their butt with it, man.
Yeah.
They're like, I'm gonna go take a shit. What? We're not doing that. I have to get lunch.
So, so we do have this far-right Christian movement that is trying to turn our nation into a theocracy, trying to say, in God we trust, but they're not telling you who's God. I mean, they are telling you who's God,
right?
But they are trying to dismantle every other voice of every other religion.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a really gross thing. It's really
a super gross thing. It's like, but then it colors the reality of people, of their thoughts about religion. They go, see, this is what happens. This is when you get into this. This is a cult. See, this is what happens. And you don't see the full picture at all.
Yeah.
It just changes. The translation becomes extremely warped and extremist, you know?
Yes. And we find at the end of the movie that we're talking about, where the utopian, quote unquote, utopian society has been more or less dismantled.
Yes.
Their government's been toppled, their prison system and everything has all been dismantled. And now you have the people coming up from the underground, and they're just like, nah, we're going to tear this place apart. We're going to party like it's never, like you've never seen, and everything like that. And you have this extremely simplistic Sylvester Stallone coming in, and he's like, hey, you know, maybe somewhere in between, you'll find a good balance, you know, you know.
That's pretty good. Eh? That was a pretty good impression. Good for you.
I can sound dumb, man. I do such a good impression of stupid that you might mistake me for being stupid.
We're not telling the real story, though. The translation is different.
But I mean, of course, the movie doesn't want to deal with that.
No.
You know, we want to deal with, you know, bringing in a violent person to take down, you know, this fake utopia. But that's where the interesting part would really begin. Don't you think? Like,
yeah, I think so.
Where the underground people have to come up and they have to start learning to live together again.
Yeah.
That's where the real story for me starts. But, you know, I mean, everything.
Yeah. Isn't that the story of America, right? We got to start figuring this out, man. Like,
exactly. And the more one side wants to have its way all the time, the less likely we're ever going to get there.
Yeah. And
that's, you know, such the real, you know, problem that we have. And the problem that maybe if you're looking at, you know, Demolition Man through a very intellectual lens, and you're ignoring the fact that it's really just a dumb action flick, you know, that you can say, yeah, it's actually bringing up some pretty good points about how we need to find a balance between good, healthy living, respecting each other, not doing anything to harm ourselves or other people.
Yeah.
And then at the same time, having the freedom to choose whether or not we want to live that way.
Yeah. Right.
And, or live so perfectly and in accordance to all these different ideals.
Yeah.
Idealism is a funny thing.
It is.
The reason that something is an ideal is because it's not reality. Ideally, reality would be like this, but it's not reality. The moment it becomes reality, it's no longer an ideal.
Right.
So in order, you know, to sit around and complain that everything's not ideal, that we're not living in an ideal nation and an ideal society and things like that, is completely contrary to the idea of an ideal, of having ideals.
Yeah.
And having to try to work toward ideals and progress toward ideals, and to constantly have those ideals challenged. You know, at certain points in our lives, I think we have these really healthy moments where we realize an ideal that we once held on to actually isn't any good.
Like what example? What's an example of that? You think?
Well, I mean, I would say maybe the ideal of your particular belief system being the right one, being true. You know what I mean? So the idea that somebody attends a specific church, it's because they think, or we think that we are in the right place.
Right.
If we didn't believe that, we'd go somewhere else.
Right.
So, but to have that idea challenged and to say, what if there isn't a right place?
Right.
What if, I've just been maybe in an echo chamber of my own thoughts.
Yeah.
And the moment they're challenged, they all might, kind of crumble beneath me.
Yeah.
I think it's a really healthy moment to say, and
I think so too. I've definitely had that aspect of my life as I've gotten older, for sure.
I'm vegetarian. I've been vegetarian for 17 years or something like that. I used to love meat. I was really good at cooking steak.
Yeah.
Really good.
Like really good.
Yeah. And then at some point I realized I don't need to do that. And I don't go around preaching vegetarianism to anybody, but I'm just saying, for me personally, there came a point in my life where I realized I don't need to participate in a system that harms animals.
Yeah.
That's just not something I need to be a part of.
Yeah.
It's not something that my body requires. I mean, look at me, I'm huge, I mean, does it look like I'm starving?
Simon proving a point. It's maybe why he hates himself in another dimension.
I've been working really hard to get back in shape. And I had this wonderful moment yesterday where I was doing an exercise and I saw myself in the mirror and I thought, holy cow, I look jacked. Like my muscles were looking really good in that moment. I'm not saying they look that good all the time, but in that moment, in that mirror, in that lighting,
in that time, you're willing to change your mind on something. You know, with that, I feel like that on most things in my life, probably almost everything in my life. I think you have to ask yourself, what would have to happen for this thing not to be true for me anymore? Ask that question. What would be the answer to change this? If there was an answer, I probably would change it for almost anything for that. I'm open-minded about it, but it's like, I don't have the Highlander syndrome. There don't only be one.
There can only be one.
I call it. I'm like, I'm not Duncan MacLeod. I mean,
I think it requires a distinct lack of curiosity to believe in only one thing.
That's interesting.
And I think when somebody in a position of power, whether they be a preacher or a politician, or a manager at your work, they don't want you to be very curious. If I'm the CEO of a company, I don't want you to be curious about the other company and the benefits of working for them. I want you to only stay here and work for me and work under my guidelines and my pay scale and all these other kinds of things. Same thing if I'm a political leader. I don't want you to be curious about what's happening on the other side. I only want you to be, think about what I am telling you. And I'm not trying to insult pastors and things like that, but I'm just trying to say, how many pastors are quoting Buddha? How many Christian pastors, are quoting Buddha? How many of them are opening a Muslim text or any other kinds of, Islamic or texts and things like that and saying, here's what this says. Let's think about that in how does that affect what we're talking about in our own religion? I don't see it very often.
And in fact, I almost never see that.
The only time I see that is to disprove the other side.
To
say, so I actually follow a YouTube channel. Well, I follow a couple of them, but the main one is called Jews for Judaism or something like that. And it's all about keeping Jews Jewish.
Mm.
And in order to do that, you have to discredit Christian missionary work.
Mm.
So here's where Christians are getting it all wrong.
Oh.
I find it fascinating. I love it. It's just great. I mean, to watch, some of these great rabbis just really make fun of Christians and what Christians believe sometimes is really great. And usually they're very, polite about it, but they're also very strong in their stances and things like that. And this is why Jesus is not the Messiah and all these, so on and so forth and so on and so forth. And but that it's such an interesting thing to witness, instead of saying, this is how we're alike. This is how our beliefs, intertwine and interweave, and this is how we can relate to another belief system. It's all about, no, do not relate to these people. We do not relate to these people. We do not believe what they believe. They get it all wrong. And, they make a lot of really good valid points. So I can't fault them for that. But but I just think that's an interesting thing to do an entire movement just to prove someone else wrong.
Right.
What would change to just say this is how they're right and this is how we're right?
Yeah. It's too simple. Again, it's too simple. It's way too, when humans don't like this stuff. I'm just convinced we don't like this simplicity. We have to muck it up. Because people have this weird fetish towards car crashes, towards extremist things, towards drama. Humans love drama.
Yeah.
Humans love true crime.
This is true.
They love it. They eat it up. It's just, I have a buddy who runs a news organization who's like, humans love violence. They love controversy. It's you try to give people really nice stuff, they just turn it off.
They turn it up. Yeah. I believe it.
They don't want it.
I believe that 100%.
People don't want it. It's it's crazy, actually. It's oh, you're right. You're right. Anyways, Housewives of Dubai next. Let's move on. It's just weird, man. It's
I've never understood those kinds of shows, and I've seen them on in the same room, and I find them so disgusting and so annoying. I guess can't even stand it.
I'm like, this is not me. I was like,
Well, and because nobody comes off in a good light in those shows. No. Everybody sounds stupid.
Yes.
In those shows.
Yes.
You know what I mean? And as a person, nobody would want me on one of those shows, for one thing. But why would I ever agree to be on a show that I know I'm going to come off as a one-dimensional idiot?
Yeah.
For the sake of drama.
Right. I mean, you had mentioned to the January 6th thing, we have all this information, right? Mm-hmm. And we're going to keep getting more information, and the information is just going to be crazier, more damning. People love that stuff. Damn the consequences. It's just interesting to people. You know? And that's where I have a hard line, is okay, it's okay, fine. If you want to watch crazy stuff, whatever. But when it becomes real life crazy and it actually hurts people, if there's no consequences to behaviors, you just have chaos. Do we want to have chaos? Is that what we're saying? We enjoy chaos so much, we'd just rather have that than have consequences to things?
I think that's just a great point. And it's a great point to say, if these hearings don't end up with real consequences, then what was the point? It's just
horseshit. If it doesn't do it, it's just horseshit, man. It doesn't mean anything if nothing happens.
Yeah. And
it's TV.
It's so much more. It's just grandstanding. It's just grandstanding. And, and I think the people who are involved in, let me tell you one thing. I never would have thought in my life that somebody with the last name Cheney was going to be a personal hero of mine.
That's true, man.
And I still don't agree with Liz Cheney on many political things, but that goes back to a previous point.
Yeah.
I don't have to agree with her. I can be completely ideologically opposed to her and still respect her and the personal truth that she's following.
Yeah.
If I can see that she is a sincere and earnest human being who is
Right.
who's honestly following that truth, and
Yeah.
she has to be. You know, I mean, there comes a point where, you know, she's just ruining her career.
Correct. But that's integrity.
You know, that's
integrity. And I think we're crossing this integrity line way too much in our country. And like, we're just allowing it to happen. It's like, we're like, you know, I'm not one of these people who are like, oh yeah, the old school stuff, that this old school values and stuff, you know, things change and there's certain, but on some, there's a line, there's certainly a line. And if that integrity line is always crossed, then it just doesn't mean anything. Then it's just chaos. I wonder if we want that. Seriously, I wonder if humans actually want that. Like,
you know, I think there's a part of us that honestly kind of does, but I've been more convinced that there is a certain, and unfortunately, I think it's almost half of the nation that would actually be more comfortable with an authoritarian.
I agree with that.
Government.
Totally agree with that. Yeah.
They want, you know, an iron fist, you know, somebody who's just going to say our way or the highway.
Yeah.
Kind of a deal. If you don't like it, go to another country. Those types of philosophies where it's like, no. We're based on agreeing to disagree.
Right.
That's what this country is based on. That's what we're supposed to. It's supposed to be we, the people, not we, the ideologically, you know, left or right, or we, the Christian, or we, the whatever. You know, it's we, the people. It's everybody, and that, you know, for better or for worse, includes radical voices.
Right.
Really radical voices. And I don't want to silence those radical voices.
Yeah.
I just don't want them to be the loudest voices that everybody is following all the time.
Can't you just be the guy in the Winnebago on top of Mount Rushmore or something? Or like, you're just kind of nutty and you broadcast from like 3 a.m. Like, that's fine. Like, we don't need to be like center stage. Like,
no. Yeah. You know, I mean, because all of us are having these internal dialogues all the time.
Yeah.
So we have our ego, and then we have all the other kind of voices that we kind of argue with, you know, and that challenge our ego and challenge basically what we've been talking about this whole time, challenge our own personal kind of status quo.
Yeah.
And we can choose to silence all those voices, or we can choose to actually listen to them and do what you were saying earlier and say, okay, what would happen? Take it to its logical conclusion. What would happen if I'm wrong?
Yeah.
And would that be so bad?
No, it actually
if I were
wouldn't
wrong.
Be. Yeah. I've been wrong about a lot of stuff in my life. That's why when anybody says, that's why Demolition Man's interesting. It's a prediction about the future through a movie. And I always see that when anybody predicts the way the future is going to be, they're dreadfully wrong about it. It's never what you think it is. Ever. It's not going to be Blade Runner. It's not Demolition Man. It's not Aliens. I don't know what it is. And neither do any of us know. We don't know.
In the case of the United States, it's always been better than what's been depicted on film.
It is better. It is.
And I think that's something that people on both sides of the political spectrum need to accept and grapple with, that whether you got your way on a particular vote or topic or something like that, America is still better than we ever thought it would be.
That's right. That's right.
You know, I mean, America is better than the founding fathers thought it would be. There's no slavery. You know, we're at least closer to equal rights.
Yep.
You know, we're not perfect, but we're closer. We're a hell of a lot closer than they were.
Yeah,
you know?
Exactly.
I mean, so, you know, I understand people's lack of patience. I have a real lack of patience with a lot of things as well. When you have things like Roe v. Wade being overturned and things like that, you know, really interesting about that is that I have found that a lot of conservative Christian women have been really bothered by that
Most
overturning.
definitely. Most definitely.
I can't think of anything that's been more universally that people have been more universally opposed to
Opposed. Yes.
than that ruling.
Right.
The minority of people, the minority voice of people who wanted that overturned just were so loud.
It's just, that's what we've been saying.
You know? And
the
so
loudness, man, we got to take back that loudness from the fringe aspect that wants to become the mainstream, or that.
And that unfortunately unfortunately starts at the voting booth. And I know
Right.
a lot of people who just did not want to vote for Hillary, and I can't blame them for that.
Sure.
But now that they didn't,
Yeah.
now we have 3 people who lied in their testimony.
Correct.
Saying that they would not overturn Roe v. Wade.
Correct.
Who did. And that's the consequence of not getting out there and just voting, even if it's not what you want, even if it's not your ideal. It's not going to be. We're not going to have an ideal.
There's no ideal person, but
No.
I think there's like, that's what my integrity thing is like, okay, clearly you're learning that there was no integrity in those 4 years of 20. Like, do you want that? Or do you want someone who's like competent, but maybe not, but at least has integrity, maybe not as competent as you would want them to be, but they have a really good line of integrity? I'll take that.
I think you just described Joe Biden.
Right. But you'll take, right. Yeah. Even though a lot of people are down on Joe Biden, you'd rather have that than a literally crazy person. Like,
yeah, I mean, I'd rather have somebody.
I'm not that into it, but but like, I want the integrity is the line for me, Simon.
Yeah.
That's the line. You can be crazy and other stuff, but you can't like go past that. Like, you can't just blatantly be like, yeah, I'm going to do that, even though I know it's really bad. Like, you just have to have a line. And a lot of these guys just don't have a line. They're just like, whatever.
During the Trump years, there were a lot of, more liberal people who were saying, boy, I never thought we'd miss George W. Bush.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I remember hearing that a lot too.
Yeah. But, I never hear conservatives say, boy, now we miss Obama.
Yeah, that's true.
But here's something I want to bring up about that. And I was just having this conversation with somebody. And I said, there was a time, and I know that not everybody agrees with me, but I feel like there was a time between 2008 and 2016 when things were actually really positive for a while.
Yeah.
And we disagreed, but it wasn't violent
Yeah.
disagreement. It wasn't, we're going to take up arms at the Capitol type of disagreeing. And I want to point out that during that time, the 2 most influential voices in the United States were Black people.
Yeah.
Barack Obama and Oprah Winfrey.
Yeah.
And it's a lot more complex than just saying that.
Sure.
Because I think when a person of color like a Barack Obama or an Oprah Winfrey rises to that level of influence, they understand that they are representing a community.
That's correct.
Donald Trump had no ambition to represent any community well, with integrity, with any kind of positivity. He only wanted to represent himself and the loudest voices that would adore him and say they love him.
It sounds like your podcast.
I'm my own Donald Trump.
Okay, this sounds a lot like Simon's new podcast. Adore me. Adore me.
Love me. Love me.
Please. I swear I'm a pacifist.
But who out there is feeling that responsibility to actually represent? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
To really represent. Yeah. When people feel that that integrity that you're saying, when they show that integrity because they feel that responsibility to represent in a positive way their culture, good things happen.
I agree.
Oprah Winfrey's and Barack Obama's happen.
I totally agree.
Are they perfect people? Do they do everything right? No. But what's the worst scandal Barack Obama was guilty of? Wearing a tan suit. That sometimes he hid around the corner to smoke a cigarette on the campaign trail. You know, I mean, it's like, I know. I mean, he did say I was going to be able to pick my own doctor. And that's the thing, you know, I actually think that a lot of the times these politicians really believe what they're saying. Like Barack Obama, I think he told some lies,
of course,
that he actually thought were true, that he just didn't know. Donald Trump, I think, probably believes a lot of the lies he says.
I totally believe that. Yeah.
But the evidence speaks otherwise.
It does. So much evidence.
We as the people have to be able to look at the evidence and say, okay, they weren't.
Right.
I mean, look at George W. Bush. I actually love that guy.
Oh, man. He seems like a good dude, actually.
Look at the way that he represented America during the Trump administration. Right. If you go back and read some of the, art, like op-eds and things like that, that he wrote during that time, he was really classy about it.
Yeah.
But he, you didn't have to read between the lines to see that he was completely against what was happening in his own political party.
Yeah. And in some ways, this may sound crazy, but that conflict between the two parties may be good, because in the future, maybe this is long past when I'm alive, it may give rise to another major party, which may desperately be needed to break up the union. We
really hope so.
I think that's what's going to happen in the future. I could be very wrong, but I think people are just so down on all the extremism on left and right that people, I think we're going to move more towards a moderate based thing. Maybe not in my lifetime, but that's what I feel like, is people are just exhausted. They're exhausted by social media extremism, political extremism, economic extremism. It's like, can we just have the simplicity of living? But it's too simple, right? But we're fighting that fight all the time. It can't be that simple. No, it can be. No, and we're just fighting that all the time. Yeah. It's got to be more complex, like a scientist trying to make something sounds so complex when it's very simple. It's deduction, deduce down to the simplest. The most intelligent people I know deduce things down to the most simplest thing. Simon exists in a different universe and he hates himself. It's simple.
That's okay. That's all right. Yeah.
It's simple.
The biggest thing that I think a movie like Demolition Man gets right is that whenever one side is touting freedom, it's always freedom by oppression.
Correct.
We can't ever seem to get to this point where we can view freedom without oppressing somebody else's voice, oppressing somebody else's beliefs and things like that. I don't have a simple answer for that, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Because it's almost like the rule of comedy that somebody has to suffer for it to be funny. Somebody has to slip on the banana peel.
Yeah.
And I wonder if we'll ever find a pathway to freedom that's not like that doesn't oppress somebody in some way.
I feel like we're trying. I feel like a lot of people don't see it, but I feel like you said, America's better than we think it is, than the founding fathers think it was. But I also think maybe Obama said, somebody said, the arc of justice is bends slowly or whatever. It was something like that.
Yeah.
And I think progress is certainly not linear. It is like a nasty line, all over. But as long as it keeps inching forward, I think that's what's happening. But it's really hard to see it. If you are not looking,
And we have to accept the ebbing and flow.
You got to accept it's going to be ugly. You know.
Yeah, we have to accept that there's going to be things like Roe v. Wade being overturned.
Right. It's not great, but it's like, okay, this is part of like a nasty progress cycle. Like, and it's weird. It's hard, you know.
We have to be woken up to how bad a job we're doing.
Yes.
Does that make sense?
No, it makes total sense.
So we have to be shocked into it all the time. And we were talking about the Old Testament earlier. The Old Testament God Yahweh would tell his chosen people that all the time.
Yes.
I have to keep doing these terrible things to you.
Why you make me act like this?
To wake you up. And I feel like things like Roe v. Wade are one of those types of things. We have to get woken up to the idea. I mean, Barack Obama himself decided not to make, any kind of legislation about abortion a priority.
Yeah.
And we've had that, since the Roe v. Wade ruling. How many times have we had somebody in office who could have pursued legislation to make sure that those rights are never taken away, but they chose not to. So now we have this rude awakening of saying, we drop the ball on this all the time.
That's how it is, man. Simon, it's so funny. Like, I feel like I could talk to you for like 10 hours straight. Like, we got like a marathon podcast.
We'd have like
we'd like literally could have like the longest podcast known to man. I have to run. It's my fault. I mean, I know everyone is amazing. I know it's amazing. It's about us.
It's amazing. It's amazing. We're incredible. We're so wonderful.
I'm just so wonderful, man. I just seriously, I say this. I hope people hear this, not for the benefit of other people, but I really enjoy being with you, spending time with you. Like, it's like actually one of the better things I do every month.
Me too. Joking. It's
I love it.
I as well. I really look forward to our conversations.
Yeah.
I look forward to talking to somebody who actually won't judge me.
No. I mean, and I like humor.
I'm never afraid of that, but I'm just saying, it's kind of funny that, it's such a relief to get on here and talk to somebody who, is reasonable.
Yeah. I want to be reasonable.
I love reasonable.
I want to look a little crazy, but not be crazy. That's the tagline. Look crazy, don't be crazy.
There you go. I love it. Now,
thank you, my friend. I appreciate you, man.
Thank you. We'll talk to you soon.
All right.